Alrighty. So, yeah, I just got to that yesterday. All right, so here we are continuing our investigation of the profound. Um, so last time, which was a few weeks ago now, we were looking at impermanence. And in this session, we're looking at, well, it says multiplicity, complicating our reality. In terms of setting out the logical reasoning, we'll get to that, of how we apply this concept of emptiness and dependent arising to in meditation to gain further realization of that. So first of all, when an image comes to mind, image of a person, an object, a situation appears to us, does that, like, say you see someone walking down your street and you think, oh, that's so-and-so. So you've got in your mind the so-and-so. Does that appear as something unitary, as a single entity, singular, partless entity? Or does it appear as something full of parts? Like, for example, you think about that. So say I see a flower. I can't take these flowers apart because they're plastic. Maybe I can. So I see a flower. When I see a flower and I've got an image of this flower in my mind, I see a whole flower, right? I don't see one petal, because that would be, I see petal, right? But the petal is a part of the flower. Nor do I see just stem, just a green bit of plastic rod. So we'd say that's not the flower. And yet it's made up of all those parts, but I don't see all those parts, right? Same as with an image of somebody we recognize in the street. Correct? So, and then if I did start taking this apart, leaves and so forth, then it would be no longer a part of the flower, then it would be leaf, etc. So this is a way, intellectually, of course, I know that it's comprised of all these parts, because that gives me a base suitable to label flower on top of, right? Because it has to be something that's, I can't label vase flower or anything else but flower. And because there's 3 flowers in it. They're still intact, thanks to plastic. Okay, so, maybe this is something to do with our evolution, that our perceptions, our conceptions, that we do reduce people and situations, everything, with its multiple aspects, all its parts and so forth, into a single entity. It sort of makes it easy to communicate, doesn't it? And of course, those features are there. And we have these features that, in terms of an image, then become something permanent. An image is an unchanging thing. Last time we were talking about permanence and impermanence. So, in other words, this is a mere convention, we could say, or a way we've evolved to engage, facilitate a quick response, decision-making, anything. But it also leads to us grasping at that person being like that, putting them in a box or whatever, putting things, events in their separate boxes. And that then leads to distorting our image of reality. Right? And then we develop and perpetuate unskillful responses, because we're responding according to that generic image that we've created. Yeah. All right, so call to mind, this is an experiment, call to mind the image of a farmer. You know what a farmer is. Okay, what do you see? What does anybody see? What does anybody see?
Bloke.
A bloke. What sort of bloke? Any bloke? One of these blokes here?
Bloke wearing a hat.
A bloke wearing a hat. Anything else people see?
Corduroy shirt.
Corduroy shirt. Overalls.
Holding a pitchfork.
Holding a pitchfork. Yeah, that's that painting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know the painting, man, woman, pitchfork. Yes, so that's our image of a farmer. If you're in Africa, you would picture a black woman, because most of the women, I mean, we didn't say colour of the farmer, but think about what you call to mind. But because 99% of the farmers in Africa are women. So according to our context and so forth, right? But we have an image, and that's our image. As soon as we hear the farmers are doing this and the farmers are doing that, we've got an image there, right? And that's how, and to a certain extent that can be innocuous, but it can also lead to problems and difficulties once, because it distorts our understanding of reality. Okay. So the Buddhist analysis attributes this to our mistaken view, our fundamental ignorance, which means that we are going to impute onto things a sense of permanence, which we talked about last time, grasping at persons to be self-sufficient, unitary, grasping at objects to be unitary entities existing out there, independent from me. So therefore, it's neither here nor there. So I have these flowers and I give them to you, right? So, and then I come and actually destroy the flowers because I'm doing my demonstration. And now they're your flowers. So you could get very upset because now they're yours. She gave them to me. They're mine. And now she's destroyed them. We could have world war over them, right? This is how things work. So we need to counteract that with a wisdom that realizes reality as it is. So we've got two aspects to this. The wisdom realizing the lack or emptiness of such self-sufficient, unitary, permanent, independent persons, selves of persons. We usually start with our own self of person, but thinking other people. And that's the wisdom realizing the selflessness of person, of this me, this self. And that becomes, as we go further through this today, our object that we're going to analyze. And then the second part is the wisdom realizing the lack of emptiness or emptiness, which means that solid unity of the object, the flower or whatever object we look at. So that's the wisdom realizing the selflessness of phenomena, that even down to the minutest particle, there's no inherently existent, inherently meaning objectively out there from its own side, independent of me or of me labeling it or anyone labeling it, etc., etc. So these are two different aspects. So we start with the selflessness of lack of any true existence self. And I'm jumping ahead, I won't jump ahead. And then we go on to the selfness, the self phenomena. So the self of person. And so we investigate at more and more subtle levels of selflessness which counteracts this mind grasping at a truly inherently existent soul. So we interrogate its being unitary, permanent, partless, self-sufficient, substantially self-existent. All these terms are used because of the different schools that assert there must be something out there from its own side, or in here from its own side. And we get to the level of the self being a mere label, like this convention that we use, that I relate to myself and others. I don't talk about arms and legs and this and the aggregation of that and that. We have labels, but that label is designated or imputed upon this collection, which we call the five aggregates, the body and mind, as we sit in the Heart Sutra: form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. So these five. So that's the investigation that we start with, okay? Feel free to chip in at any time, questions or comments, so forth. So we start with our own self-identity in relation to selflessness of person, our own self-identity, our own self-image. And think about how often do we, just like the farmer, fixate on a single image of ourselves. Maybe a good image, maybe a bad image. As one of the prisoners said, it says here in this, it was actually a Christian book, which was fine. But he says, it says here, you can be a good person and a bad person and a good person in the same lifetime. Is that true? So he had an image of himself, bad person, because here I am in prison. And I didn't get here from being a good person. And I said, you can be a bad person and a good person in the same minute. That's a bit much for his poor mind, because he'd always labelled himself a bad person. And then you act accordingly, whether that makes you do more bad things or hide in shame your badness or whatever response. So how well can we tolerate an awareness of the different aspects, multiple aspects of our personality, of our, some might be contradictory to each other. And if you've got maybe friends in relation or colleagues or so forth, different areas of your life, whether you've got different types of relationships in those different areas. And if you've got invited all those people together to a party, you're cringing.
Yes.
Really? Yeah, would it be comfortable? I mean, it might be. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, be comfortable with that, but maybe I've narrowed my field of friendship. So you know what I mean, So more to the point, would they have common interests, something that they could share, common ground to share on? It might be also an opportunity. People broaden their horizons, you never know. But it's sort of like we've got these separate entities of ourselves. And we apply that same sort of thinking to other people, animals, basically everything. And also, our work situation, the situation of the world, the political system, the whatever, everything. And we focus on some sort of simplified unitary image of them. When I was at Vajrayana Institute and people would say, oh, Vajrayana Institute is doing this, and Vajrayana, I'd say, you are Vajrayana Institute. What are you doing? Like, it's not like some separate entity. It's only a label on what is the Dharma Center, what is Hayagriva Buddhist Center. Right? Yes, there's a building labelled that. But when we're talking about Hayagriva Buddhist Center does this and that, we're not talking about the building, are we? But are we seeing ourselves as separate from that or part of that? So these are questions we can interrogate. Because often when we say things like that, it's like it's got nothing to do with me, where in fact it has everything to do with me. Yeah. So like that. Okay. So then it can become problematic in terms of how we relate to those entities. You know, that this is, oh, that's a bad organization, that's bad politics, or that's whatever camp we put people in. You know, we put people in inherently evil because they're in prison, maybe. And you know, having spent some time in prison, but never more than about 8 hours at a time. I think that was the most. Yeah, it was the most. That was when we were allowed to have all day meditation. So that was pretty good, pretty cool. Not even 8 hours actually, because you know, they have their muster and everything like that. Anyway, so we put people in different camps, right? Some are perfectly good, you know, and if they do something perfectly not good, perfectly imperfect, then it's sort of like, you know, God has fallen, from my Christian background. I'm not going to say Buddha's fallen. Buddha never fallen. Our own Buddha nature, it doesn't work that way. But it's sort of like we've put them on a pedestal and now they haven't lived up to that because they never could, because it's our own imputation from them of all these things and so forth. And then see what happens in those situations to our afflictions, jealousy, attachment. I'm attached to you being in a certain way. You know, people get into a relationship and then they start having fights. And where was that person I fell in love with? Where is that person gone? I'm still here, you know, blah, blah, you know. I'm the same person, but I am not the image that you have in your mind. So we get jealousy and so forth. When our image changes into its multiplicity of different parts, the image that we had of them. When we drop that categorization, which we typically say friend, enemy, stranger, friend because you know, you do what I want, you make me happy, or enemy because you do what I don't want, you make me very unhappy. And the rest that we ignore. When we drop that and focus on our shared humanity, focus on good qualities of those we have difficulty with, it's very difficult to continue to hold them as evil. There's no inherently evil being. There can be people who do really bad stuff a lot of the time. But if we, you know, open our minds to a more spacious, more relaxed, more open, it's much healthier state of mind, isn't it? And for ourselves to focus on the faults of others, you will find them. Sometimes we don't have to look far. And then we have conversations about that, and then we, you know, talk about it with our friends, and it escalates. You just feel down. You feel horrible. Why do we want to make ourselves horrible all the time? I'd rather not have the conversation. So we can work with this misconception by analysing what we call conditioned phenomena. Conditioned phenomena, everything that comes into existence, everything that functions, conditioned by causes and conditions. It comes into and goes out of existence, therefore subject to change, just that in itself. Okay. So there's no solid block, so, you know, entity of me or you or others or so forth. And then we break it down when we're looking So Kadisha phenomena or person, when we look at person, we look at the parts. We look at those, as it says in the Heart Sutra, the form, which is the body, the body. Feelings, which is the sense of sensations in the body. In the Buddhist context, feelings is not, oh, I'm feeling good or bad or whatever. They are mental factors. In the Buddhist presentation, we've just got to remember that feeling is sensation only. So it's a physical sensation in the body of, oh, that's pleasant sound, or that's an unpleasant smell, or we're indifferent and neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So I could say right now, the level of coolness in this gompa is something neutral. I neither feel too hot nor too cold. It's very nice. Well, that's a pleasant sensation. Sorry, that one's pleasant. But it's not too this or too that. And being aware of that, so feelings, perceptions, which is all about our consciousnesses, how we perceive things, see, hear, taste, touch, smell. And then it's either in the Heart Sutra, in that translation, it says compositional factors. Usually we talk about all the other mental factors apart from feeling and perception. So perception is also called discrimination. I discriminate this from that. I'm able to tell the difference between computer, table, clock, mala, etc. And this, but here it's volitional formation. So that really runs our motivation. It's associated with karma. We can say whether it's a virtuous state of mind or a non-virtuous state of mind. And consciousness itself, so the different consciousnesses, sense consciousness and mental consciousness. And an awareness of the interrelatedness, the interdependence of all of those parts that make up this person. So, for example, we have all the body parts working in amazing harmony with each other until we have some sort of imbalance and we get sick or so forth. But in general, they're cooperating, all these bits and pieces in here, cooperating from the really manifest level down to the very subtle, cellular level, and even within cells of our being. So they're all interdependent. We need all those bits and pieces to function. Okay. So investigating that, what's the scope of our investigation? This is when we're analysing, remember, to see how this self I label upon these aggregates, the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness, the thing I label upon that, me, and we have to get the right me. So it's not conventionally we exist. We're not trying to get rid of that. That would be nihilism. If we say, oh, I don't exist, that's nihilistic, because if you don't exist, who am I talking to? Maybe the insect. Right. We're all here. It's the grasping at having an inherent, truly independent, permanent, unitary, solid, self-sufficient, substantially self-existent self, this self that is independent of my body, my mind, of all the aggregates, and so forth. So we have to be very careful what we're investigating. We're investigating how such a self exists, how it exists. So the Buddha gave us 5 areas of investigation, in other words, the 5 aggregates. So we can investigate, for example, how the body exists. The body exists, conventionally we exist, and the body is made up of lots of parts. So one way of addressing this, particularly within Tibetan Buddhism, is looking at the elements that make up our body, the earth element in the body. We do meditations on this, the earth element in our body. That's all the bones and muscles and nails and hair and teeth and the hard bits of our body. The water element in our body. So what is it? I did look it up not so long ago. So you start off, they say 80% water, but as you age, that percentage goes down a bit. You get a bit more, less watery, a bit more wrinkly. You know what I mean? Not so plump. Yeah. Anyway, substantial water element in our body, and we become aware of the water element in our body, saliva, tear ducts, blood, water element in the blood. Not that we're aware of the water in the cells, but within cells, within the joints, cerebrospinal fluid, what else? Mucus. I mean, we can go on. Oh, I said that, so mucus, same thing, isn't it, right? So all the water element in our body, and we investigate that. And then the fire element is the warmth within our body, and investigate how that exists in our body. So, we might think, oh, I feel warm, right? And we're not thinking about this part of my body or that part of my body feels warm. But if we were to interrogate it, it's like, oh, my toes feel a bit cooler, or, whatever. So we investigate that fire element in our body, which includes also like the firing of, what is it? It's neurons, but it's not. It's electrical impulses. Thank you. Electrical impulses in the body. And the air element, obviously we're aware of the breath in the body. And the breath, at least we're aware of it at a manifest level, but even at a subtle level, that breath that we breathe in, there's a percentage of that becomes part of us. We don't exhale absolutely all of it, And so a percentage of that is part of that and keeps us functioning very nicely, the breath of life. So all of those we investigate, and then we can talk about the element of space within the body, all the space between all those bits and pieces and so forth, within and between cells and organs and bits and pieces of the body. So we can investigate all of that. And one investigation of all of that is realizing that I'm not so independent after all, because where does the earth element in my body get nutrition from? Food. So I bring that food in, I digest it, and then the earth element that gets expelled in kaka from the body. So we can see that it's related to the world around earth element externally and internally. We do the same with the water element, with that. We get the sweat going out, we drink a lot, hopefully in summer, and then we do pipi, and then, we sweat it out, and so forth and so forth. We cry, whatever. Blow our nose, which might be a mixture of earth element and water element. And the same with the fire element, because we're subject to change of temperature. When we feel warmer, when we feel cooler, when we put the heater on, or when we put the aircon on, or whatever. So that air element, fire element within our body, put clothes on or whatever. And then the air, I talked about the air element. Anyway, all of them. And the space element within and externally. So another interesting thing about that is when we are going out of existence of this body, we have all of these dissolve, all these elements dissolve. So we have meditations around that, the dissolution of the earth element, and what experiences we have internally as we're, and the dissolution of the earth element, now I'm on that side of whatever age. I remember in my youth reading that after 30 it's all downhill, like the body degenerates more. But actually the Buddha said actually the aging starts from conception. But you get to a certain age where it's very manifest. You know, the knees don't work as well as they used to. In fact, you know, mine are artificial now. So those bits won't age, but the rest will around it. Okay, so like that. So we have a dissolution of the earth element. We have a dissolution of the water element where everything dries up more. And as I said, they say, you know, as you get older, there's anyway less percentage of water in the body. It's still significant, but I can't remember, it was like 60 or 70%, or maybe it's a variable. And like, for example, when my mother was coming to the end of her life, in her 90s, early 90s, and the people who came along and did the home health, the care, the nurses came, and they'd say, now, because she would not want to drink too much after a certain time of day, because she didn't want to get up and do pipi once she'd gone to bed. And so they'd say, just make sure she gets it in her veggies, gets it in this, gets it in that, because you couldn't, if you offered a drink, she wouldn't have the drink. But in sneaky ways they get around it. So you make sure you still get enough moisture. Anyway, so the water element starts, and very much at the time of death, all of these completely dry up. And the fire element goes so that the warmth contracts to the heart chakra, center of the chest, so that eventually there's no warmth in the body at all. And of course, we stop breathing. So no more air element, and that's when you're declared dead. So we won't go on about when death happens and so forth and so forth. But this idea is very useful, and the meditations we have on those dissolutions is very useful, because it's getting comfortable with the idea that we will, in one level, go out of existence, and not to have our mind freaking out there because I've held myself to be this permanent, solid, going on forever entity. Even though I know intellectually that that's not true, we still hold on to that. So they're useful meditations to do. So that's one way. Of course, there are other ways that we analyze the body in terms of when we look at the existence of the self, which we'll get on to. And then feelings, we analyze that, because even I can say this is a pleasant temperature for me. I can investigate moment by moment. And then I can find, oh, I feel that little breeze from the aircon. I feel this, you know, we can investigate that those sensations are arising moment by moment. And at the same time, other sensations are arising in the body. And that's going on all the time. And our mind is labeling all the time, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, pleasant. And we're not even aware of it. And we're exhausted when we do nothing. You know, like our mind's very busy, you know, and responds accordingly. We go towards the pleasant in general, a healthy mind, towards the pleasant, away from the unpleasant, and indifferent to the neutral, just is. Or we might abide in equanimity in relation to that. And then the perceptions, so this is differentiating and identifying things. So also when we come towards that death time, we stop being able to identify things as pleasant, unpleasant, we just said, we stop being able to differentiate and even identify our dearest, closest, partners, family, so forth. We no longer, so those things all dissolve as well. And then our mental states dissolve. So that's the volitional form, the mental states that direct our actions. So these mental factors, whether it's a positive state of mind, a negative state of mind. And we talk about often the deluded states of mind, the afflictions, of course. We'd say even the most virtuous has some sense of, we've still got that sense of self-grasping. So it's never 100% pure unless we're a Buddha. But we can refine and refine and refine and become more and more pure. That's the whole object, isn't it? And then the consciousnesses themselves, seeing, hearing, and so forth. So the physical consciousnesses also, at the time of death, have become less functional. And some of us don't have to wait until then. As I say, putting my glasses on and off because I don't know which way to wear them. And now they took the cataracts off last year, and I'm like, do I put them on? Do I take them off? Oh, it's all right. I've got a new settled. It's put on, not take off. Because to look at you, I have glasses on. But to look at this, I have them on. Do they have they probably do variegated contact lenses. I don't know. I have to talk to the optometrist. Anyway, the seeing, age is taking its course. And then hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. So tasting, they say that the last taste to go is sweet. And again, referring back to my mother at the end of her life, she would have a constant bag of crystallized ginger. She liked ginger. And she also liked chocolate. So I used to get her, right up till she went in hospital just before she died. She was still very much enjoying the ginger chocolate. It wasn't nice dairy. It was from the chocolate factory in Korowa or Junee. There's one in both. Not Junee, yeah. Anyway, we used to go, when I was visiting prisons, the local chaplain would take me to the chocolate factory and buy them along. Anyway. So the sweet was still there. Other tastes, apparently, we lose that. And I figured at 93, if my mother wanted, she could eat whatever she wanted. Okay, enough about that. So these are meditations that we do, and we come to appreciate all the multiple parts that interact with each other in our existence, that bring forth people, ourselves, and we extend out onto objects, flowers, whatever, tables. We investigate. That is one of the standard investigations is table. Of course, in the Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the path to enlightenment, typically it's a chariot. Update that to car, taking apart all the bits of the car. And quite some years ago, there was an ad on television, decades ago now, that had all these ball bearings and bits and pieces rolling off the factory line, right? And then you use all computer graphics. And then it is assembled into a car. And I thought, well, that's a perfect teaching on emptiness. Sort of in reverse, because at what point does it become car? You've got all these bits and pieces lying around everywhere, and at some point we label that car. And our investigation do the opposite thing, pull those bits apart. Is it still suitable to be labelled car? When is it not car? I spent so much time at Vajrayana Institute looking at cars outside in the street, parked in the street, analysing cars. Yes. Any time's an appropriate time.
But just what you said about when is something not.
Yes.
Within the Heart Sutra, there is two parts, two lines.
Yes.
One sentence, one half sentence.
Yeah.
Which I haven't yet been able to understand.
Yes.
And it says, so I get where it says form is empty.
Yes. Empty existence.
But then emptiness is form and emptiness is not other than form. It's that
Okay.
bit.
Yes.
That
Yeah. Emptiness. So emptiness is form. So what are we saying emptiness of? When we say emptiness, it's not nothingness. What is it?
Well, it's empty of inherent.
Empty of inherent existence, empty of being permanent, being unitary, being independent, all of those things. So what we say is because of emptiness, everything is possible. Everything arises. So emptiness is form means form can arise because of emptiness. So what we're talking about is emptiness is its ultimate truth. Form is its conventional truth. But because of emptiness, form can arise. Because if everything was permanent, nothing arises, nothing is possible. It's like, I don't know, I always think of like we'd be in this constant fixed state. Hard to imagine. So, and emptiness is not other than form. So the emptiness of an object arises at the same time as the object. So that form, so it's not emptiness of something else or over there. It's not like, it's not a permanent existent thing elsewhere. The emptiness of the object arises at the same time as the object. So it's not other than form. Okay.
Because emptiness and form arise at the same time.
Yes, they arise. So the arising of an object and the emptiness of that object, so that's the two truths, arise at the same time. It's not like, oh, now it's a body, but ultimately no body. It's not like a separate time. It's at exactly the same time. The emptiness of inherent existence of that form arises at exactly the same time as that form, and that applies to absolutely everything.
So am I correct in hearing those two, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, I can think as the two truths.
Two truths. It's explaining the two truths. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
No,
These are head twisters. Yeah. Nailed it. Right. Excellent. No, but it is. Those, like that 4-line syllogism, and I guess syllogisms get used a lot in terms of, like, for example, if something is permanent, it can't be impermanent. Right. If something is a dependent arising, it's dependent on causes and conditions. If something is dependent arising, it can't be permanent, etc. You know, we use all those, and then we debate those, and we try and find exceptions to that. Yeah. Okay. Right. So this is what we do. We realise how all the interdependence of things, ourselves, within ourselves, different, we focus on different aspects of the 5 aggregates, and then the relationship of all those within our own body-mind continuum, others. And this is in order to bring about change. You could say because of emptiness, change is possible. Without emptiness, change is not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So emptiness is pretty.
All things, yeah.
I'll just keep on. I'll keep.
Yeah, no, keep, because you're thinking, it's wonderful. You're thinking, you're interrogating. This is what we're invited to do. You know, this is the only way. We have to come to it, even though we hear the words in a way that makes sense for us, that it's our own, like your take on that. And it's not like it's like, oh, okay. And it might be just a nuance of words, or
Yeah,
things like that.
it's
Yeah, it's your spot. Yeah, and in relation to the Heart Sutra, like His Holiness Dalai Lama's commentary on Essence of the Heart Sutra. I haven't checked if it's in. It should be in our library, but you know, that's what sort of I go in there and go, this needs, and yeah, got to do some work there. I put it on my hand for that. But yeah, but just keep raising the questions, because that's how we learn. That's how we, we arise our own confusions or doubts or lack of clarity or so forth, and that's how we get clear. Okay. All right, so far so good. Everybody else, any other questions arising? Okay, all righty. Yes, Ollie.
So learning physics and all that, the elements, I sort of brainstorm another way of interpreting that. Earth is like repelling, so it's the force that repels. Water is the force that attracts. And then fire is like energy that's chaotic, because that's particles moving randomly. So entropic energy. So heat being the main one. And wind is more like energy that's doing work, that's moving.
Movement.
Yeah. So that sort of, to a mind that has gone through modern Western education, this feels like, knowing about particles and physics and all that, what the Buddha said also makes complete sense, using modern scientific language. So that's sort of a sort of my own thinking. Yeah, and the other thing I want, but I'll let you respond before I ask you a question.
Well, there was no question there.
There was no question. Yeah. In case you tell me, Thomas, you're completely wrong, that's a terrible way to think about the four elements. Okay. About the form and emptiness. If I use the Swan River, right, as an example, please correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm thinking this way, we label that thing, that form, Swan River, and then we can give it give it a form on the map. We can look at geographic location, look at that, and call that the Swan River. But none of those water particles, it's the same, right? You can never step into the same river twice, right? Like, a few days later, all those water molecules will be completely replaced by new molecules. So it's the form that we are labeling, but then what enables us to label that, right, rather than pointing to every single water molecules, is that we just label that form. It's because of emptiness that is constantly flowing, that there's no actually one thing that you can point to, that is the Swan River. That emptiness allows us, it's the very nature that allows us to label just that thing, that variable, that object, or whatever conception of that object to be Swan River, right? So therefore, if the world isn't emptiness, there will not be a way for us to call that collection of thing Swan River. Am I correct in thinking that way?
The label itself, Swan River, is also a mere imputation, right?
Yes.
I don't know what the Aboriginal word for Swan River is. What was that? Venerable Jerrigan. Yeah. So it could be labelled this, it could be labelled that. It's a label that the reason we can label it that, because convention accepts it to be that. First of all, conception. So conventional, valid conception says that is a river. And then it got the label Swan River, I guess because of the swans. I mean, I'm guessing. We can impute that.
Mhm.
But then the mind has a concept of Swan River. And you analyzing like that is not analyzing Swan River. What it's analyzing is the ultimate nature of Swan River, right?
Yep.
So we
Yep.
comes back to the two truths. So conventionally, that river still exists no matter what you analyze or don't analyze. It's still
Yep.
there, right?
Yeah.
So, but what you're analyzing is the ultimate, but you have to also realize the label itself is a mere imputation. So that itself is as non-existent as every moment of that river. Ultimately.
Yep. Yep. And then sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, that's it. So just have
Okay.
to be careful that we don't leave out anything in the negation.
Yep. Yep.
The label
And then
negated.
and then we apply the same method for ourselves. So the self-grasping
Yeah.
is like, yes, conventionally there is a me that has lived through time, and go through rebirth and all that. But then like a river, like a Swan River, all the thoughts and feelings, all the mental factors, processes are ever flowing, that the next moment they'll all be gone. But then we like to think there's a continuum that we label as me. But if we analyze it in form of ultimate truth, that it does not exist in its own permanent fixed way. And we apply like what we apply to the Swan River, we apply to our self-grasping nature or tendencies. And is that how
We're just about that's a good segue into exactly this topic that we're about to look at, that analysis.
Yep.
Right. So we have different ways of approaching, and the different approaches, the different types of analysis are all trying to get at the same thing, is realizing the non-existence of this immanent self, of the one that we grasp at, the one that gets offended, or the one that I love you, and so forth. It's not like, oh, my leg, my arm, anger loves you or something. It would be contradictory. But we have this I, and then we're investigating this sense of I. How does that exist? Not the conventional I. And this is the thing. So this is what Thomas was leading into. And so one analysis is a 4-point analysis, and that's what we're going to go through. And this is from Arya Nagarjuna, Root of Wisdom. So we'll just go through these 4 points, as I'm not quite sure if we'll get through them all today, but we'll start. So the first thing is to identify what the object to be refuted is. And this is why I said with the Swan River, we have to be very careful that we identify what is it we're refuting, because the Swan River is there, right? But an inherently existing Swan River is not there. And that was your point, right? A permanent Swan River. Because as Thomas said, tomorrow's Swan River is not today's Swan River, because all those, I don't know how long it takes all the water to reach the ocean or whatever, but, one lot. But it's ever changing. So as Thomas said, the famous saying, you can't stand in the same river twice. That can those ways of thinking can help us. So we apply this to the self, and what is it that we're refuting, the object to be refuted? So Shanti Davis said, without contacting the true existence which the mind has projected. So the true existence, the inherent existence, this permanent me, this independent me, without identifying that, the typo there, one will not apprehend its non-true existence. So in other words, we have to be very careful to identify the right thing. So what we're identifying is how, not that we exist, but how we grasp onto this I. That's what we're analysing. So it's, as Prabhupada Rinpoche says, you know, this is very subtle. So this is the most important point. So we look at how, while we're looking at how the I instinctively appears to you, as soon as we say me, what's that image? How that instinctively appears, it's innate, it's grasping at having a self, it's innate. Some might argue we wouldn't survive without it, like in terms of surviving as an entity. And it presents itself in different ways, doesn't it? So sometimes it's something we associate with the body, sometimes with the mind. But this is not the genuine way of getting at that instinctive grasping at this I. So the body and mind are the basis of imputing the person, I, and that sort of becomes one broad set that we call me. But this I seems to be something more than just the mere conventional I existing here, isn't it? It seems to be something self-contained that's going on forever, like a distinct entity of its own. So as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, you know, that idea of I, that on top of what is here, body and mind, we impute, we hallucinate this I. And it's on top of the body and mind. So this is the one to be refuted. So Bongka Rinpoche says, such instinctive grasping at the I is found even in the mind stream of ants, in the deepest recesses of their mind, even in their dreams. It's nice to know that ants dream. I wonder what they dream. I did watch Ants, the movie. Sugar. Dream of sugar, yeah. Okay, so we're, first of all, just to unpack the ways of grasping. So we, based on the person. And this relates to different types of people. So grasping carried out by those who have developed the view concerning emptiness in their mind stream. So we could put ourselves in that category. As much, you know, we may not have understand it very much or whatever, that's fine. But we've heard the word, we're still here, we're still trying to investigate. And they merely impute the I conceptually upon these aggregates, right? So we know that. I mean, in our experience, it may not be like that, but in our understanding, it is like that. We know that it's a mere imputation. There's also people in this category who hold the doctrine that things do not truly exist, and they have the same form of grasping at it. So put ourselves in that category. The way ordinary people, this is a different category, whose mind streams have not been influenced by these teachings, grasp at the I. They don't care less about whether this I exists independently, inherently, or whatever. It's established by its own nature or not. They couldn't care less. They haven't investigated, right? And that's 99% of the population, or probably even more. And then a third one, the form of grasping at the I found in people whose concern is to establish the I by its own nature. It must exist independently. It must exist. Like there's got to be that essence of I. Be what we call it, intuition. I don't know. People call it different things. Soul. What else do we call it? Huh? Atman. Yeah, something. It's got to exist. Okay. So we need to investigate so that we can get the appropriate antidote to destroy this concept. And we develop various logical reasonings for that. The mind, when it's being uncritical, is satisfied with an I that is a mere imputation. You know, we go about our daily business. I don't go around going, oh, it's the mere I doing, I mean, I could, but I don't. I just do, right? We all do, right? But, you know, they're only labels, but when we realize that, but we just go about our daily business. And this, we would say that this I, in that circumstance, doesn't present itself in any way that's clear. So we need to distinguish these two. The way I seems to be established as something self-contained by nature, and the way this I actually exists. So there's second and third point above. So this is what we're determining how this I exists. While you are looking into exactly how the I instinctively, did I read this? I don't think so. While you are looking into exactly how the I instinctively appears to you, yes, I did. The I presents itself in different ways, computer or body or mind. Yes, we read all that. So this is identifying gotcha, the object to be refuted. So the object we're refuting is this grasping at a permanent self-existent I, not the conventional I, because otherwise we'll fall into nihilism. You know, I don't exist, nothing exists. That's nihilism. Okay. And if we fall into that, then there's no way we can actually get at the truth of existence. Okay. So then we look at, well, okay, often when we meditate, we think if we don't have that sense of I, think of something when somebody's offended you, and that sense of I, it's that I that pops up. How dare you especially blame you for something you haven't done? How dare you blame me? How dare you blame me? And my me comes all big and furious. That I is the one we're wanting to refute. So the next step is, well, this I, how does it exist? Because nobody said, what are you talking about so far? We've all got a sense of this I. So we investigate if it exists, it has to be either one with the body and mind, these aggregates, or separate from that. So a separate from that would be, I talk about my body, I talk about my mind, I talk about like I possess this thing. So maybe there's an I out there. But we start with looking at determining how that exists in general. Also, that a thing to exist, as we looked at last time, has to be impermanent or permanent. It has to be singular or plural, a collection. So we investigate the full sets of possibilities. And to be clear that we're sure that it has to be either dependent or truly existent. So we investigate and we make sure we cover all cases. And that we're sure that if it's neither of these two, then therefore it can't exist. Okay? So just to check here. So here we're determining how it exists, a correct mental image born of first-hand experience of the object to be refuted. Appears to the mind, this I that's angry, that you blamed me. If such an I, the one I instinctively grasp at, were established by its nature, it's got to be either one with or different from the aggregates. That's what we just said. So there's no possibility other than this too. So we get to the conviction, if we believe in something strongly enough, just think, I believe this I inherently exists. It will go on forever and ever and ever. If we believe in something strongly enough, our nervous system accommodates that belief and functioning as if it were so. So we do function as if that's so. So our muscles, so for example, decades ago, I studied mime. I was at a physical theatre school. And has anyone seen a mime show? And so it's all illusion, as you know. But for example, if I'm miming, carrying a heavy object, what do? I constrict all the muscles around that. And I've got to make this object that is not existing at all, I've got to make it look heavy to carry. Right? And so I've got to do all the muscular activity as if I had a boulder I'm carrying. And then likewise, this sense of I, all the muscles contract in our chest around this sense of this imaginary I. So just like the mind, it doesn't exist. And so we have this fortunate habit of believing indiscriminately that objects exist as they appear. You know, I used to go pay money to go and see my son. Good money. Once you study mind, you learn some of the techniques that tell you, oh, that's right, he's doing that. So that's creating that. So that spoiled it all. But without having that view, without having that insider knowledge. And we all want to believe, don't we? Want to believe. Who's that big famous guy? I can't remember his name. David, somebody. Illusionist. Copperfield. Yeah. So we want to believe, don't we? We want to see magic. So this is all true. So here's a story to try and understand, just another story. So this this man, he's a farmer. He's a dairy farmer. I don't know what he looks like. Doesn't give him a description. So he gets up early in the morning and goes to milk his cow. And he goes out to cow shed, the door's open, walks in, he looks in the stall, no cow. In the back of the shed, door's open, so he goes out to investigate, walks down the laneway, no cow. There's a field on the left, he looks in there, no cow. There's a field on the right, He looks in there. No cow. Where's the cow? And then he remembers, oh, I saw the cow yesterday. But just like that. There's no soul. Yes. It once was dairy farm. I was a dairy farm and only had one cow. Or maybe he wasn't a dairy farmer, because how many cows do you have to be a dairy farmer? I guess one's enough. Yeah, exactly. Can you still call yourself that? Couldn't find it. So it's like an investigation of, where's this eye? I looked in the shed, not in the shed, not in the stall in the shed, not in the laneway, not in that field, not in that field. So that's a sort of analysis that we do. It's like that. Okay. A bit more here on this one. Okay. No, it's just a key point about meditating. So as we meditate, should lead you to the certainty. If it's neither of these two, it's neither on this mind-body continuum or separate from that, you have to develop the certainty, neither of these two. Neither of these two. It cannot exist. If it is neither of these two, it cannot exist. So you haven't even refuted it yet, but you're saying, well, it's got to be one or the other. And if it's not one or the other, then it can't exist. And you meditate on this key point, not merely for a day or two, but until you gain unshakable conviction in it. In other words, beyond just going, yeah, sure, I get it logically. You gain the conviction. It's got to be one or the other. There's no third option. Can we think of a third option? So that's what we need to meditate on stronger. Okay. So we've got two more points, which we're not going to get through. So any questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. So if the concept is that take away all the parts of life,
Yes.
the name,
Yes.
parts of my body, and mind,
Yes.
that we're left with emptiness, if I understood it correctly.
We're left with realizing, so that's the next point that comes along, is that we're examining, where does this I exist? And so we interrogate all those parts. We interrogate the body, we interrogate the mind, and we go down to the subtlest level of interrogation to see, well, where does that exist? Right. And we come to the conclusion that it doesn't exist anywhere in any of these parts, this I that I hold on to.
Yeah,
so that's the next point.
Seems, I guess, easier to think, okay, I know I'm not in the parts and I'm not my name.
Yeah.
But it does feel like that I'm separate. That
correct. And that's the point after that. So we do the one on this, and then it's like, what about that feeling of being separate? And then we analyze that one. So that's the next 2 points coming up. So we'll go in more detail on those next week rather than rush through, but that's exactly what the progress. So you can see how your mind immediately goes to that. And so there's a logic there.
So it does feel, there's something that goes on. Or, apparently,
yes,
goes on. So
absolutely.
It feels like the general consciousness of your awareness that
it's something.
That's something.
Yeah.
Something there.
Yeah. And when we're saying, so, and this is where empty is not void, right? It's not nothing. Emptiness is not nothingness. So it's not, there's got to be something or nothing. It's empty of something truly existent, like a truly existent Swan River. Where is the truly existent Swan River? In the Swan River. So that sort of, so it's that truly existent part that we refute. We're not refuting existence, we're refuting the mode of existence that the mind grasps at. Yeah. So you can see. the real, you know, stretches our mind in many directions. Right? So those 2 points we'll start with next week.
After realization, your behaviour will change.
Well, you might, in general, so the realizations come in different ways. So we first go through by analysis. So we're using our conceptual mind to go through logically, so that the mind can gain a conviction, right? And any time, even in that analysis, where you feel like, we then, because analysis is analytical meditation, and then when you feel like that, you place your mind there, and when that feeling, when that sensation, that aha, mini realization, we have many realizations, that experience, when it starts, when we lose it, we go on with the analytical meditation. So we keep going backwards and forwards. What we want to do is stabilize as much as possible when we get any taste of that, right? And stabilizing that is, we're trying to stabilize it non-conceptually, but it probably is conceptually for quite a very long time. But at whatever level we've got it, you know, we stabilize it. With that conviction, I'll hold my mind there for as long as possible, right? And then we go over and over and over and over, and we keep doing it. We keep doing it. So we might at times have a sort of what we conceive to be emptiness taste, but we have to be careful that we're not blissing out, like just going space out, oh, that must be emptiness. No. So this is why we have to be very careful that we're getting the right taste. Otherwise, we're going to be chasing an experience that's not it. Anyway, shouldn't be chasing any experience. But there's sort of glimmers come. And then when those glimmers come, we hold it in our mind and try and make that stronger. And it's usually very gone before we realize it. But if we can hold it even a nanosecond, that's really that is transforming our behavior already. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, even hearing the word emptiness, even you don't know what it means, starts to break the hold of samsara. That's it. Most people fall into that category of who cares? We care. Thank you for your courage. So we'll leave it there for today and for our dedications on page 8. So dedicating any mini realizations we've had to continue to grow in our mental continuum. Ewa di nyudu da lama sange drugune drowa chikama lupa de salado pa shu jancho centro rimpo she makye panam ke kuchi ye pa nyampa me pa yang gone gondu tawatu. Page 9, the prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings who suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Long life prayer for Tenzin Asul Rinpoche. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganjan tradition, essence of Buddhist teachings. Foremost and holy Lama, to you who are supreme, we make this prayer of supplication. Lama, please, please live long. Okay, so I just want to check if everybody's got the notes or wants to have the notes. Thanks, Thomas. If you're still there.
I have them.
I'd love to have the note.
In case anyone sees me drinking this beverage from a wine glass, I'd just like to clarify it's actually coffee. See, merely labelled